April 2017 Shipping Prices at a Glance webinar. Thank you for joining us. My name is Catherine Barrios. I am the CMO at Xeneta, and I am joined today by our CBDO and co-founder, Thomas Serbo. Welcome, Thomas.
Thanks a lot.
So this is our second webinar of the year, our rates review. We will go through some of the Q1 stats. Just some housekeeping items. This is scheduled for 30 minutes. 25 minutes are for the presentation given by Thomas. The 5 minutes remaining will be reserved for Q&A. You can ask your questions in the webinar tool. On the right-hand side, you'll see an area that says questions. So you put in your questions in there, and we will look at those towards the end of the webinar. If we don't get to your question, we will answer it and send you a reply over email. The webinar is being recorded, so everyone that has registered and everyone that has attended will also receive that recording by tomorrow over email. Other than that, I think we're ready to start. So at this point, I'll hand over to Thomas, and he will take the presentation forward. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Catherine. So it's turbulent times. It's a lot of happenings in the market. Spot market rates are almost back at the level of what they were approximately 2 years ago. Carriers have been able to force through like large, high rate increases across the board. Shippers and also forwarders have huge challenges now in order to sometimes secure space. When you look at the outbound from Europe, the rates are increasing both on the import side, on the export side, to and from quite a lot of the different continent combinations. And there's a lot of challenges in terms of some of the companies when it comes to finalizing the tenders. What is a good rate level? Are we able then to secure long-term rates and so forth, and also obviously to set the right expectations internally. Today we're going to go through this agenda. So first of all, I'm going to give a quick overview about our company. Then I'm going to show you a bit when it comes to the current state of the market, also now some of the highlights in Q1. I'm going to show you a live demonstration of the platform, and to end it off with some outlooks, what we see from the data that we have on hand, and well, the last 5 minutes will be for a Q&A session where you're welcome to ask any questions, and then we will do our best to answer them. If we don't have enough time to answer them, we will come back by email. So Xeneta is a market intelligence platform. We provide market intelligence for shippers, freight forwarders, and carriers. We are a neutral platform that crowdsource freight rates from our customers. And today we work with more than 700 customers all around the world, with more than 2,000 users. We're headquartered in Oslo, in Norway, and that's also why I can hear my accent. We also have an office in Hamburg and also one in New York to be closer to our customers. We work with all kinds of industries, and what they have in common is that they ship a lot of containers, and usually also that they have a complex supply chain, meaning that they're shipping products to and from all kinds of continents all over the world. This is truly unique with Xeneta. So in Xeneta, we focus on only the dry van container market, so only 20, 40, and 40 high cubes, and we provide analysis and intelligence when it comes to that. Since 2012, when I and 2 others started the company, we have been able to attract large shippers from all over the world because more or less everyone have the same questions. How competitive are we in today's market? At least from a shipper's point of view, and from a forwarder's point of view, how competitive are the rate that we receive from the carriers, and in terms of also to stay competitive when selling to shippers. And obviously also when it comes to carriers, it's very interesting to see what kind of rate levels are being being offered into the market to try to optimize the rate levels. So in Xeneta, we work with all industry stakeholders. We claim that we are the largest database when it comes to contracted freight rates. Today, we have more than 23 million contracted rates crowdsourced into our platform. And obviously, benchmarks and market intelligence will never get better than the information that we'll base it on. So all this information from these 700 clients makes it possible for us to cover more than 160,000 port-to-port combinations all over the world. What also differentiates us from anyone else is that we update our information real time. It's updated every day based on the input we get from customers. Obviously, that doesn't mean that if you're a shipper with a long-term contract over a year, that you'll have to update that on a daily basis. It means that based on the duration of the contract, we will import that into the application. And then since companies are tendering on different times during the year, some have long-term contracts, others have short-term contracts, we'll use those validity days to calculate the indexes. And last but not least, an extremely important point, we are independent. None of our shareholders comes from the industry, and it's extremely important for Xeneta to remain neutral because we want to do business with everybody. And we truly believe that transparency can help both shippers, forwarders, and carriers. So how do we get data, and what do we mean by data? I guess you all know and are familiar with how the shipping industry utilizes Excel. So the input to Xeneta is usually the output from a tender, from a shipper, or larger rate sheets that we receive from our forwarders. The information those sheets include are obviously the duration of the contract, the equipment types, the surcharges, the base rates, and so forth. And what we do with our rate management team here in Oslo is that we normalize and structure that data into a comparable format. And then based on that, we create indexes and dashboards that helps our customers measure their performance over time, understand how they compare to the market, to set the right expectations internally, but also to drive negotiations with either a forwarder or a carrier. And then obviously also to track that development over time. So it's all about continuous improvement. And since logistics and since shipping is such a volatile and opaque market, you need tools to optimize and really improve performance. Back in Q4, we said that the biggest danger of a slumping market is the recovery. And we also saw that now in Q1. There was a lot of our customers that waited or delayed their tender to now after Chinese New Year. Also, we know that there's a lot of shippers now in the tender trying to finalize the rates for the rest of the year or for the next 12 months. And it's a challenge for quite a lot of them. So what we've seen, also what we said in Q4, is that on the Asia-Europe side, but also from Europe to Asia, it's a seller's market. Rates are skyrocketing, and we're going to look at now how you can then monitor that through the application. Let's see. So the way that our customers use the application is that based on the input they provide to us, the rate sheet, is that we are then able to populate their account. No information is shared between our customers. Everything's confidential, but what we do is that we aggregate the information into indexes on corridor level, but also on port pair level. So I prepared a couple of couple of corridors where we would be able to then look at what is now going on the Far East to Northern Europe main corridor. So in this overview, we have aggregated more than 100,000 rates for the last 12 months. And what we're looking at is then the 40-foot equipment. In the application, you can select the different equipment type, 20, 40, or 40 side cube. You'll then have an area chart that shows you two different colors. So the lighter green is the market average. Market average is the average rate amongst all our customers, and in this case for the short-term market. And you have the darker green, which is then the bottom of the rates we receive from our customers. So we show basically the full spread from the bottom to the top with market high. But I'll stick to market average and low. On the left side, you have the US dollar amount. And in the bottom, you have the development from the 6th of April last year up till today. And in the application, you also have abilities to select the different contract types. So I prepared now, so you can then select the long-term rates, and then you'll see. I'll drill down also then to view what is going on the Q1. So if you only wanna focus on now what's happened since 1st of January 2017, you're then able to utilize the platform and see now we started out in 1st of January with a rate level around 2,000. Now the spot market rates have slowly moved down, and we're at the level of 1,718. And as I mentioned, this is information updated dynamically. There's also ways how you can then also compare what is the development not only on the spot market but also on the longer term market. So what you see here, you see obviously less volatility. This shows you now the development for contracts negotiated now in Q1. So from 1st of January and all the way up till today. And we see now rate levels at around 1,400 as the average for a 40-foot container for longer term contracts, down to 1,200. So obviously at a completely different level than we saw last year. Go back to the presentation because I also have prepared a slide that basically shows you the combination of both the spot market and the longer term market. And we know that there's a lot of companies now in the negotiation, and obviously if they compare their long-term rates negotiated back in 2016 at the same time, they're pretty different than what you would be able to secure today. So basically what this chart shows you is the US dollar amount again on the left side, the dates from 1st of January last year and up till today, and then combined the short-term market. So this is the spot market, what you see here in the area chart in green. Again, you recognize what I mentioned just previous to what I showed you in the platform, that there's been a decrease on the spot market since 1st of January. But since mid-March, April, May last year, there's been a dramatic uptake in the spot market. So the red line, this shows you now what have shippers contracted when it comes to long-term rates, and how has that developed since this time last year. And as you could see from this graph, it clearly shows also an uptake. So what we see, as I mentioned also on the previous slide, a lot of rates are now being contracted at a level of an average $1,250, $1,300 dollars for 40-foot for the rest of the year, and there's a pretty wide spread when it comes to the lowest one, and obviously also up to the top. So also ways how customers are using the application is, as I mentioned, they load in all data into the application, and from this application they're able then to access the different port combinations. So I can do a very, very simple search from, for example, Vientiane to Rotterdam. I'll see then the development over time, and I have then my suppliers. This is extremely important. So you're only able to see your rates. So in a case, imagine that you have an account with Xeneta, you upload the rates you have, you're then able to compare those rates against the market. So what I just did now, I clicked on the Maersk Line rate, and I'm now comparing it to the long-term market. And you'll see that it's been more or less aligned with the long-term market now during the entire 2016, and now there's new levels coming in at higher level, and now we're looking at a 20-foot at 805. So this is just an example, but this is then how customers utilize the platform to get the insight. I've done the same thing for the US, to combine spot market and long-term rates to give you kind of a flavor of, I know there's a lot of companies now going into the tender season on the Trans-Pacific lane. Here again, you'll have the dollar amount on the left side of the graph, and you have the development of time since January last year up till the end of Q1. You have the green area chart showing the average rate from Far East to North America West Coast. Again, you see a falling spot market, and then the longer term market is the red line. Like most of the contracts negotiated on the Trans-Pacific trade is done now in Q2. You'd see that the rate levels for last year was pretty stable. There was a dramatic decrease from 2015 into 2016, and some of the newest contract coming into our application at the moment, they are at a level of more than $2,000 on an average. So it's going to be very interesting now to see what is going to happen on the Trans-Pacific trade. And obviously in the application using Xeneta, you have then access to do these analysis on more than 160,000 port pairs all over the world. And we are a company now also in a very, very steep growth. So obviously the more data, the more customers, the more intel, and the more accurate the intel you can derive from this to support your negotiations, set right expectations internally, drive negotiations, and then show improvement and drive continuous improvement over time, which is the whole purpose of benchmarking. To close this off, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. Carriers have been able to push rate levels to a new level that we haven't seen for the last year. There are capacity challenges on export eastbound from Europe. Who knows how long this is going to stick, but obviously it's a huge challenge for a lot of forwarding companies and also shippers to get the space they need to ship the products they need to their customers in Asia. It's obviously also going to be very interesting to now see what is going to happen, even if the carriers have been able across the board to push up rates on more or less all corridors. How will this develop now through the rest of 2017? Since there is still an underlying factor of an oversupply in the fleet. So, but we're going to then watch this very, very closely with Xeneta, and you can also have access to this information, and then you could contact any of the sales representative that you might have been in contact with, or drop us an email through the contact request. I think now we're done with the presentation, and we'll go into the questions and answer session. Anything you would add, Catherine?
Hi, thank you, Thomas. No, I think that was great. We have a lot of questions coming in. I don't know if you can see them as well, but perhaps I can read some here. Some of these you've answered. We have a few questions here. If you can see them, I'd recommend that you go ahead and start selecting some of those.
So let's see here. Just a second. So at the beginning, you mentioned that prices of spot market increased in the last period. Can you mention the main reason? So the last period, so if it depends on the corridor, but if we look at the corridor from Far East to Europe, there was a decrease in the spot market rates, but there is an increase on the longer term rates. Obviously, reasoning for that can be multiple reasons, but there has been a push from carriers to increase the rates, and there seems then to be less competition in the market at the moment when it comes to only price. Can we assume the rates move the same from North Europe main to Far East main as they do from Far East main to North Europe main? In other words, in reverse direction. This question is actually for all the rate pairs noted. So what we currently see is that there is an uptake on the longer term rates from Asia to Europe, and we could also clearly see there's an uptake on the export side. But the difference from spot market on the outbound from Europe to Asia, and the difference between spot and long is at an extreme high level that we haven't seen in the last couple of years. We planned to have a sea freight tender this year, but still waiting due to the unpredictable situation currently. Do you see any potential period to have tender this year? It really depends. Back in Q4, we said there's some shippers, and we saw from our data on our customers that some shippers, they waited to see what will happen after Chinese New Year. Based on the data we have received, that was not to their benefits, because the rates now secured during Q1 was at a higher level of what was negotiated back in December. So to give any estimates for the future, it's difficult. Obviously, there's been now and the carriers going through the new alliances that has an impact, and based on the situation with the imbalance between capacity, there might be more competition when it comes to winning market share that might drive down the prices, but it's very difficult to say and comment. There's also a question, what is about rates for reefer containers? Today we do not cover the reefer market. We only cover the 20, 40, and 40 foot high cube dry van container market, but it's on our roadmap for this year to start to cover also the reefer market. But it will take some time before we are at the level where we are comfortable with the quality of the data before releasing it to our customers. There's a lot of questions coming in here. Let's see here. How can we predict the rate for future looking at last year data? Now the market is completely different. That's absolutely true. What we do is that we do not do any predictions when it comes to rate levels. But what we can do is that we can look at the data that was then historical, and we can also look at new fresh data that comes into our platform to really see how was the development of the rates last year, and how is the development for the new fresh rates negotiated during this time today. And here, and comparing that, you see clear differentiation, and the rate levels negotiated now during Q1 in 2017 is at a completely different level of what was negotiated Q1 last year. It's also a question if there's a way to compare between big volume BCOs and small ones. Today we do not allow the comparison of industry or volume brackets, but we display the full spread of the market from top to bottom. There's been and there is a lot of obviously questions regarding when it comes to volume. We've done some analysis based on the data that we have, and in a lot of cases there is no true correlation between bigger has more competitive rates. Last year, for example, we saw completely different situations where actually smaller and medium-sized shippers received more competitive rates than the larger ones. Obviously, there can be a lot of reasons for that, but last year, obviously, a lot of them, small and medium-sized ones, were able to take advantage of the spot market, but now might have then challenges to secure the space. That said, we are planning to offer analysis on a higher level when it comes to these questions. So when it comes to, is there different rates for the different volume brackets? Is there rates that differ between different industries, and so forth? That is something that we are going to offer now during 2017, and but this is something that we can come back to. How do you manage contracts subject to peak season surcharge, and can you separately show the difference PSS levels negotiated? So what's unique with the application is that rates come in with a valid from and a valid to period on the rates. If there's an increase of, for example, 1 month rates, they expire, and then the new rate with the PSS is then made and activated in the platform. So we can always reflect the current market prices based on the data we receive from all our customers. And that's also why you can see clearly increases and decreases by monitoring and using the applications, because it's updated on a daily basis on the input from our customers. There's a question also if we are able to measure inland haulage. Today we are not able to offer any comparison when it comes to port door, although we have exceptions when it comes to the North American market. So there are an ability to compare to rail ramp in Chicago, for example, and other ports in the US. Let's see here. Will we get to a point this year where annual rates would be beneficial again? That's a good question. Based on the data we have, the longer term rates are moving upwards, but it depends now when rates go up to a certain level and carriers are able then to secure them at a much higher level than they were last year, if then they go back to fight for market share again. But it remains to be seen. Let's see here. I think we are. I think we
We're a little
are
bit out of time, Thomas.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
I see that.
We take one more question, and then we'll answer the rest over email.
You know, I think we just answer the rest over email, Catherine.
Yeah, there's too many coming in, which is great. But thanks again, Thomas. I just want to remind everybody that we'll be at Transport Logistic, the trade show in Munich in May 9th through the 12th. If any of you are in the area and are attending that event, we would welcome to meet you there, and we can provide you. We'll be running a series of live demos throughout those 4 days. And in addition, if you're interested in learning more about Xeneta, seeing your own freight spend analysis, we encourage you to contact us. Come to our website or send us an email. I think if on the next slide, Thomas, there's a link there with an email, info@xeneta.com. We will be sending out the recording as mentioned tomorrow. In that email, you can reply to that and we'll get back to you, and one of our Sunita experts and analysts will get back to you and we can give you more in-depth information regarding your trade routes and the cargo that you're shipping. Thanks again, Thomas. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Bye-bye,
Thanks a
everybody.
lot. Bye-bye.